Trying to stage a production of Georg Büchner's Woyzeck that accurately demonstrates the hectic and incomprehensible nature of the play requires meticulously planned chaos. Using multimedia to create a disturbing, confusing atmosphere to give it its well-known disjointed feel. Racing images, clips of film, bright, flashing lights, repeating screens, and perception-altering projections are just some of the techniques used to create a disjointed digital world. In Mel Stuart's Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, premiered in 1971, there is a scene where a boat goes through a tunnel of disturbing images and fairground-style lighting. This was one inspiration for my decision to use media. In my design of Woyzeck, a similar type of effect would be used to create confusion in the piece. However, the images used would have correlation to the speech, unlike in Mel Stuart's film. The rushing effect of the images creates a type of seasickness to really amplify the uncomfortable atmosphere of the play. As Woyzeck is a troubled man and comes across as very alienated from everybody else, creating a highly digital world that alienates the audience as well as the character of Woyzeck creates a bond between the two. This extends an invitation to the spectators to empathize with Woyzeck and experience his pain with him. The digital world being created on stage with screens and lights isolates Woyzeck. However, this must also be enforced through the characters as well. Creating people of a digital world could easily turn very cliché and go down the cyborg or robot route. However, I decided to steer away from that and simply have all the characters except Woyzeck use text-to-speech software. The only real human voices other than Woyzeck's would be used in the pre-recorded footage on repeating screens that are there to represent the inner workings of Woyzeck's mind. As Woyzeck becomes more and more unhinged, these voices would become more distorted and different types of voices would gradually filter in, making it feel more crowded and busy.
Woyzeck.
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 Some scenes from Hotel Performers Cosmos were also an inspiration for my design. However, instead of the 3D projections used in Cosmos, in Woyzeck it would be done using an overhead projector and haze machine. 2 different coloured circles would be projected onto the floor, and the haze machine would then be used to highlight the streams of light coming from the projector above. So rather than projecting circles in mid-air, there would be 2 cones, one within the other, from ceiling to floor. These projections, along with the rushing images and text-to-speech software, give the real world in the play several different types of media. The repeating screens that represent Woyzeck's mind, although are still in keeping with the digital atmosphere, are supposed to be subtler because it is only supposed to represent inside Woyzeck's head. Costuming in this production needs to be incredibly simple. The entire cast, apart from Woyzeck, dressed only in black. The more key characters would have a signifying proper accessory so that they can be easily distinguished. The reason for steering away from extravagant costumes is in order to avoid distracting too much from the projections and lighting that will be occupying the stage. As Woyzeck is separated from these people and not touched by the projections in the same way, he is dressed in more detailed clothes. Although still simple, jeans, t-shirt and shirt, the t-shirt will be patterned to add an element of eccentricity to Woyzeck's attire, but is still fairly hidden. His shirt will be khaki like an army shirt with a serial number on the breast pocket to reinforce that he is a soldier. Dressing Woyzeck in a completely different colour palette reinforces the idea of alienation. Not only does this isolate him from them, but it also makes it easier for the spectator to differentiate him from the others on stage. Because of this, Woyzeck does not need a signifier like some of the other key characters will have. For example, Marie, being perhaps the second most important character, must be fairly easy to pick out of a crowd. A red ribbon in her hair will not only make her discernible from the other female characters, but also draw attention to her long black hair specifically. The reason this is so important is because it is the feature that the drum major notices and describes when he first sees and falls for her. The drum major, as the rival love interest and therefore another key character, will carry a typical drum major staff that will quickly make it obvious who and what he is supposed to be. Woyzeck's only real comrade in the piece is André, and therefore his signifier should have some connection to Woyzeck to try and enforce this. As André must be dressed in black, the best way of replicating part of Woyzeck's costume would be to also give him a serial number along his breast pocket. This shows the audience that they are both soldiers, but the sense of camaraderie must only be subtle because the sense of isolation about Woyzeck must not be broken. Therefore, linking their serial numbers very closely with perhaps only one difference would demonstrate this to the more attentive spectator. As Buchner wrote Woyzeck as a case study based on a real story of a man murdering his wife, having the layers of Woyzeck's mind on the screen keeps a link to psychology, which is the purpose the script was written for. The fragmented, disjointed nature of Woyzeck is such an iconic feature of the play. However, as a performance, it also is important that the audience understands what they see and how to take something from it. In many productions, they simply remove the blackouts during scene changes to implement a sense of chaos. One of the more well-known productions of Woyzeck, done by Ingmar Bergman, where the actors and spectators are integrated to the point where their levels of confusion were so high it was hard to tell where one ended and the other began. The fragmented disjointedness of this version of Woyzeck is achieved through the use of multimedia. Because of this, the stage will remain bare apart from the screens around the back and sides, because this avoids overcomplication for the audience. The use of props will be minimal, therefore the significance of the props that are used is emphasized. For example, the knife in the scene where Woyzeck stabs Marie is extremely important, and thus, by making it one of the only props throughout the performance, almost guarantees it gets noticed. The final scene where Woyzeck wades into the water could be considered the most interesting, important and intriguing scene in the play, not only because it is the final scene, but also because we don't know if Buchner intended for it to be the final scene. As Buchner died before finishing the script, nobody knows whether this is the intended ending or just happens to be the place where he had paused before he died. For this reason, leaving an air of mystery seemed important. As the design is set in a digital world, using the projections onto the screens and into the space to create a water-like effect to envelope Woyzeck seemed very apt. To conclude the entire performance, the stage should be left completely empty, with only static on the screens and white noise through the speakers. This effect leaves the audience with the impression that, rather than that being the ending, everything could have simply been cut off, leaving leeway for the possibility that Buchner had other ideas about the end of Woyzeck's story.